Hello, you're watching the Jack and Jack show with Jack Stroudy alongside me. Jack, how are you?
Very well, thank you. Glad to be back once again. Thankful that I wasn't in the Midlands on Sunday, which we will get onto. I'm sure Joe Sansom's even more delighted that he's down in Jamaica right now, enjoying the sun, rather than having to deal with this dreary weather and dreary football. To be honest with you.
Yeah, it's been a terrible day for weather. A terrible weekend for Fulham in all aspects, I think, on and off the pitch, and other results not going our way as well. You got the score prediction right. There was a lot of Villa fans in the comments because the title, of course, was "Will Fulham beat Villa?" and Villa fans were just like, "No chance." And obviously, we both thought we were going to lose. I predicted 0-0 just because you might as well back your team. And I thought we were really poor in the 60 minutes that I saw before I decided that I'd had enough and went back to Birmingham New Street. I must stop making a habit of leaving games so early. Then again, you pay your ticket, you're allowed to sort of do what you like.
Yeah, do what you like. If you want to leave early, leave early.
Yeah, and it's it was a Sunday evening. You sort of want to get home. But Jack, let's talk about the game. Let's talk about the wider issues we're seeing at the club as well. I have to say, Aston Villa were brilliant. There was no sort of hangover from the Thursday night win against AZ Alkmaar. If there are any Villa fans watching this, as much as you'd like to give it in the comments, and that's absolutely fine because that's the tribalism of football. I thought Villa were great, and I think they're only 2 points off Arsenal. They're only 2 or 3 points off the top four, and if they can maintain this, not only can they go far in the Conference League, I genuinely think they could probably win that competition, but they could probably qualify for the Europa League on their own league merit, and maybe Champions League's a bit of a push, but you just never know under a manager in Unai Emery. Let's get on to Fulham, Jack. Did you consume the game? Excuse me, before we start, we must mention our sponsors for this video, Green King. For this season, the 23-24 season, football is more than a game. And if you don't want to watch a game on a dodgy stream, then head over to a Green King pub to watch it. There's no football, of course, this weekend, but you can watch every televised Fulham game at a Green King pub this season. We thank them for their sponsorship this season. And of course, you can go on their Instagram page for deals and competitions, and you'll be helping out Fulhamish as well by doing that. Jack, give me your thoughts on Aston Villa 3, Fulham 1, please.
Well, I mean, yeah, as you mentioned, we'll start with Aston Villa. As expected, they were absolutely fantastic. This is probably the worst time to play Villa, particularly at Villa Park. They've been so strong now for so long. As I mentioned, I wasn't able to watch the game live because I was at work, but I caught up with everything post game and watched the extended highlights to try and gauge as much as I could out of the game. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seemed like the first half particularly was really, really quite poor from a Fulham perspective. Aston Villa seemed to control everything, and 2-0 maybe. You could have potentially argued it could have been more than 2-0 going into half time, which is obviously not ideal. Second half was slightly better. Raul Jimenez made him put himself about a little bit more. Obviously hit the post, broke his duck getting his goal as well. But overall, I mean, from what I saw, there wasn't really too many people who stood out to me as being, really, key players in the game. Alex Iwobi looked okay from the highlights, but again, you can't really go off of highlights to see who has had a strong game. I thought Harry Wilson, his ball over for the Raul Jimenez goal is something I don't think it's really getting talked about enough. It's a really, really good pass, and he plays it over to Anthony Robinson, who obviously then squares it to Jimenez for a tap-in. The kind of thing that you want to see the Welshman doing a little bit more, maybe getting into those creative areas a little bit more. But as a whole, it was a pretty bleak day for Fulham, and I'm quite glad that we've got an international break now just to try and, as you mentioned last week, take a little bit of scope, a little bit of perspective, and try to build on what was an okay start to the season, but we've seen a little bit of a dip in the last few weeks, as expected when you've played the teams that we have.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's a really good time for an international break. I don't think I personally don't want to watch Fulham for another couple of weeks. I think we've been in worse states. Obviously, we've been near the bottom of the championship, but I think morale in the fan base is really low. It's reflected in the atmosphere that we're creating at games. I tweeted this about 45 minutes ago about how we lost to Spurs, and that was obviously a disappointing evening, but it was Spurs, and at the time they were top of the league and flying. And a day later, Marco Silva signs a contract, something we've all been craving for over a year now. After fear he would just sort of run down his contract and leave. There was no sign of appreciation when we went to Brighton. There was no sort of 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes of really serenading Marco and sort of saying thank you for signing on and sort of sticking with the project. We drew that game 1-1. I have to admit the atmosphere after we scored was great, but from the start, from a fan's point of view, you want to get behind your team. It just didn't feel like anyone was up for it. Whether it was a Sunday, it was a 2 p.m. like Villa and everyone's sort of hungover, fair enough. But also, like, it doesn't take that much effort to make noise. And I saw a tweet at the weekend that was like, within 5 minutes of the game starting, I was told to mind my language and be quiet, basically. And that's just obviously not what you don't go to an away game. Minding your language is obviously something people are quite sensitive about. That's okay. But to be told to be quiet is so counterintuitive. We're literally trying to make an atmosphere. I remember being in the concourse and, there was a bit of, bit of chanting, and even then it was a bit of a struggle to sort of get things going. But then I thought, okay, here we go, game starts, and just no one made any noise. And that's not like down to individuals. That's just down as a collective. We seem reluctant to try and make noise. And when you go to Craven Cottage, the only people making noise is people at the back of H5, and that sort of dribbles down to H4, H3, 2-1, and then down, and sometimes it's the Johnny Haynes and round. But the atmosphere at games this season particularly has been nothing short of shocking. When this time last year, we were 6 points better off than we were at this stage last season, but it was absolutely rocking because we were scoring goals. I get it. We score goals, that creates an atmosphere, but good performances, give encouragement. But then we went to Ipswich. We were both there, and the atmosphere was, well, from what I can remember, was absolutely cracking. It was brilliant, Jack. And I don't get it, especially after Marco Silva signs a contract. What's this fear of making that? I don't think it's a fear. It's just a reluctance to sort of, you can't be like, oh, just because we're not singing doesn't mean we're not behind our team. That's fine. But that is a way in which you get behind your team. You sing and you at least chant, or at least try and make some sort of effort. But I just think the last couple of away games we've gone to in the league, it's just not been good enough from our fans. It's not been very good on the pitch, of course, and that obviously reflects onto the fans. But usually the atmosphere builds before kickoff anyway. So we'll see in the coming away days whether that changes. Craven Cottage is always going to be the same because that's just how it is. But it's a shame, Jack, and it just feels as though right now, with the team sitting in 16th and the results not going our way this week, and there's a grumbling of discontent that I haven't experienced at the club since maybe before Marco Silva was even here. Does that necessarily mean Marco Silva is under pressure, though, Jack? I don't think that's the case.
No, I think there's a lot to unpack there. So I'll start with the the atmosphere at games. I think it is down to the fact there is a real lack of feel-good factor at the club at the moment. If you flip it to this time 12 months ago, we'd just come off the back of an unbelievable season in the Championship, and we'd started the Premier League fantastically well. We'd won away at Forest and at Leeds, and picked up a point against Liverpool, and we beat Brighton and Brentford at home. Mitrovic was firing, and the new signings come in. Polinia was fantastic, and Leno was fantastic, and there was a real feeling that there was something building here at the football club. And I think, and I don't want to keep going back to it, but I feel like I do, and I'm a bit of a broken record. I think we've regressed from last season, and I think that is partially down to a very poor window. in terms of the recruitment, the uncertainty around Marco Silva and Willian and Palinha, and obviously Mitrovic left and was never replaced. So I think that's a contributing factor. I think the fact that fans are starting to show some discontent towards the owners in terms of the pricing of games. I get that the away games are a completely different matter. You know, they can only charge maximum of £30, but there's a discontent.
Unless you're Leeds or Sheffield Wednesday in the Championship, of course.
Yeah. But there's a discontent from fans beginning to grow, and I think that, you know, you mentioned that Ipswich game. I think the reason why people were so up for that was because the cup at the moment seems to be the only thing that, you know, Fulham fans can be excited for. We're now in the quarterfinals for the first time since I think like 2004 or something like that, and we've got Everton, who, I mean, that's not going to be an easy game now. They seem to have turned it around.
Completely.
But I think the reason why Portman Road was such a vibrant atmosphere was because of the stage of the competition we were in. I think if you would have had that in round 3, would it have been the same kind of mood? Potentially not.
You're right. Yeah.
I mean, I suppose it probably would have been a new ground for a few people, which might have got people excited for it. But yeah, the mood around Fulham at the moment is very, very negative. That's myself included. I feel so, I don't want to say disconnected, because that's definitely not the right word. You know, we're in the Premier League and all this sort of stuff, but it doesn't feel enjoyable at the moment watching Fulham. I think the Ipswich game was really fun. I thoroughly enjoyed that. But generally, like, I don't get up for weekends now where I'm like, oh, like this time last season, I was so excited to watch Fulham play.
Yeah.
You know, there was such a feel-good factor. But now there doesn't seem to be that. And I think the only way, you know, that gets remedied, I'm sure you and Joe will go on to it after the international break. We've got a few home games now. Obviously, there is Liverpool, but we've got a few home games now. We play Burnley and Bournemouth in around the Christmas period as well. We need to start picking up results. And because I don't think we are going to be in a bit of a relegation battle. I don't think that. But, you know, if we don't pick up these results, then, you know, those question marks definitely start to be mentioned. And also you worry who that could, if we're struggling, who you could attract in January to, you know, push yourselves up a level as well.
I think you make some fantastic points there, honestly. Just looking at the table now, you know, I said last week that 4 teams might get cut adrift, and it's just, you know, proved me wrong. Because well, I mean, it's not, you know, it could still happen, of course. But Bournemouth beating Newcastle was not only a great performance by Bournemouth, and I think they were hugely merited it. And, you know, Dom Solanke looked fantastic, and the whole Bournemouth team looked brilliant, albeit a Newcastle team who have got about 1 million injuries right now. That then put pressure on us to sort of go to Villa and need to get something. And, you know, the whole way up, we were speaking to a Villa fan on the way up who was on our train. He said, oh, you know, what do you think? I said, look, we're going to lose today. We will lose, and we'll lose pretty comfortably, I reckon. And that was the case. Then Sheffield United, of course, got a very good point against Brighton. Could have won the game as well, with Brighton going down to 10. A big chance at the end of their game. Luton obviously lost to Manchester United, and Burnley lost to Arsenal. But we're 16th, and we've scored 10 goals. Only Burnley have scored less than us. Sheffield United and Luton have scored the same amount of goals as us. I mean, to say we're not in a relegation battle is probably true right now, but 2, 3, 4 games down the line, if we're still sitting less than 16, 17 points, I'd say we're in trouble here. And obviously Luton play, I think some of those teams down the bottom, they start to play each other. That means that points will be gained and obviously lost. But you can't just sit here and go, well, I think there's 3 worst teams in the league, therefore we'll be fine. It doesn't work like that. Like we said at the beginning of the season, that is how we think it's going to pan out, because there are 3 teams worse than us. But then again, you still need to pick up those points yourself.
Yeah.
Because they may be worse than you, but they're still getting points. And we're in a situation now where, you know, 6 points above the relegation zone. We were 6 points above the relegation zone going into the World Cup last year. But there wasn't this feeling of, oh, we're in trouble here, because we were scoring goals and we were getting good, you know, results, and the performances against City and United in particular were decent enough to sort of give us confidence, and then we sort of flew from there. I'm fearful though that if we don't beat Wolves, who by the way were stunning against Spurs, and they'll go into that game at the Cottage in with a lot of confidence, we then have to go to Anfield, host a Forest team who are just improving. I know they lost at the weekend, but they're improving and they're scoring goals home and away and getting points. Then we host a West Ham team who are also flying, and then we go to Newcastle, who are Newcastle. I mean, I have to be concerned. You have to, because results will come for those teams down at the bottom because they've got something to worth fighting for, and obviously we do as well. But the goals they're just not there. They're just drying up. In the first half, the best chance we had was Andres Pereira, and it was offside. The shot was well saved by the keeper, but it was offside. And I will admit, once I had left the ground, apparently the performance got a lot better from Fulham. I thought when Adama Traore came on, from what I saw from the highlights, we were creating a lot more. Harry Wilson was much better. Jimenez then scored. The own goal from Robinson was really frustrating because in that situation, Leonard just goes, leave it. It's mine. Leonard can get there, but he missed it. And obviously it comes off Robinson and goes in the back of the net. Second goal, I actually missed it. I was in the concourse. But McGinn sort of skips past one. It's just far too easy. And then the third goal comes from us sort of on the break, attacking. And then we think we should get a foul on Robinson. It's never a foul anyway. And they break and score volley Watkins, who somehow missed, to make it 4-1 from close range. Jack, I am concerned. And I think Joe Sanson will probably feel the same way. He sort of said to us, didn't he, that the general consensus on our group chat is that once Bournemouth once the teams below us get to the point tally we're on right now, we're going to be away in the mid-20s points tally. Now, I don't necessarily agree with that in terms of we'll be up to the 20s, but we'll be hopefully further away from them than we are right now, Jack. I'm sorry I've been a little bit ranty in this video. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
No, absolutely. That's the purpose of this. It's not a positive time right now, so rant away. But I mean, as you mentioned, obviously next up's Wolves. There's obviously no Palhinha for that as well. He's suspended, which is sorry to be the bearer of even more bad news.
My word, forgot about that.
I get it's slightly concerning now. Absolutely, I completely agree with you. It's not so necessarily the points tally; it's the performances that I think are the most concerning at the moment. But we have to get something from those home games, which, as you mentioned, they're not easy home games. But if we want to, as you've said, extend our gap on these bottom four per se, you have to be winning these games, or you have to be picking up points in these games. Whether we will or not is another story. As you mentioned, Wolves are starting to come into things. Forest look okay, and West Ham are playing particularly well as well. Jared Bowen is on fire at the moment. And then, as you mentioned,
I'm not going to.
Yeah, I'm not going to. And then you've got away trips to Liverpool and to Newcastle, which are, if you've got 0 points from them, that's to be expected. So it's definitely a bit of a glum time at the moment with Fulham. I wonder if there's a potential to necessarily change things from a tactical point of view. I think there's been talks around the fan base for quite a while now, particularly with Andreas Pereira, who seems to be a little bit of a bystander in certain games. The big one for me would be potentially. Now that Adama Traore is back, I wouldn't be against putting Harry Wilson in the middle, in the 10.
Yeah,
because he plays.
Iwobi in the 10 is also
that's the thing.
Doing quite well.
You've got Iwobi as well, but I think Harry Wilson getting into those central areas, I think he's a better player when he's playing down the middle. To be perfectly honest with you, and I think now you've got Adama Traore / Bobby Reed on the right, who offer different, they're different types of players. You've got Willian as well. And then, as you mentioned, you've got Iwobi who can kind of slot in anywhere. I do wonder whether I don't want to sit here and criticize Marco Silva, but I do wonder if there's a little bit of, a naivety to not wanting to change things, especially when you consider that the performances.
Or stubbornness.
Yeah, stubbornness. That's probably the one. Not naivety, but a stubbornness of not wanting to change things, because we saw it a little bit as well towards the back end of last season, where when things weren't going well, we didn't necessarily change things too much. There was that spell where we lost to like Bournemouth and to West Ham and Brentford, where we were pretty poor, and we just we refused to change things.
But I think the fan base can forgive Silva for that, or the players for that, for those performances, because we'd been so good in the first half of the season. It's almost like the second half of the season didn't really matter. People were just happy to be here and sort of being like, well, we've been so successful that we can allow ourselves to sort of lose some games. And the performances weren't dreadful. Bournemouth first 20 was very good. Other 70 wasn't good. West Ham wasn't very good at all. It weren't dreadful performances where we weren't creating anything. We were creating a lot more than we are right now. But going back to my original point, we could sort of allow those sort of dip off in form to happen because we'd gone to like Leeds and won. We'd gone and got points, elsewhere and in the first part of the season, Jack.
Yeah, I don't want to sit here, and I don't want anyone to think that I'm sitting there and slagging off Marco Silva, because that's the last thing I want to do. Yeah. I think he's been absolutely fantastic for Fulham, but I do wonder if now is the time where you potentially look at tweaking one or two things, especially going into a Wolves game where we are Palhinha-less. We haven't got Joao Palhinha. So where do you go from there? Do you play Lukic as the more defensive player in the six, or do you play Reed and Iwobi, or even Tom Cairney potentially should maybe get a game at some point? It's certainly there's a lot to mull over, I think, for Marco over the next week or so, 2 weeks basically, where we haven't got a game, as to what Fulham do from here to try and right a few wrongs.
Maybe there is a case to sort of not go too hard on in the players, because if you actually strip it all back, and let's literally go from back to front here. Leno, whatever, that great keeper, our keeper. But you think about it, for most of the season, we've only had now Bassi and Ream, especially for the last few games, only Bassi and Ream available for centre-backs. De Fuggerol's obviously not quite ready for Premier League football. Tosin's still injured. Diop's still injured. So that's okay, fair enough. We've also not had Kenny Tete, who's been our best right back for 3 years.
I was going to say an argument is that Castagna has been absolutely fantastic, I think.
He has. But I would say that Tete is the better player defensively and going forward. Nothing against Castagna. Like you say, he's been brilliant. Robinson's obviously, he has one good game and he has one bad game. He has one good half, he has one bad half. Then let's go into midfield, where it seems as though obviously Palhinha is a mainstay, and obviously he'll be out the next game. That's a huge shame. But he's been brilliant. Lukic, my friend is like so anti-Lukic, and it just really, really, really triggers me, because I think Lukic is a very good player.
Yeah.
Harrison Reed's obviously had a very weird season where he's sort of not played as much as he was last season. He's sort of fell down the pecking order a little bit, because obviously Iwobi's coming in, taking up a position as well in midfield. Going into Wolves, when you say change it around a lot, I think, do you remember that game? Obviously, we'll remember it. Do you remember the game we played against Tottenham in the Cup, where Adama Traore started and was brilliant?
Yeah.
And everyone was saying, Adama Traore is a great player to bring off the bench. I would start him next game.
Yeah, no, I agree.
With him on the right and Harry Wilson on the left, because Harry Wilson's our best winger, but he doesn't start most games. And when he comes on, it's like, Harry Wilson, he's injected a bit of spark into our performance because we brought him off the bench. We'll just start him from the start. I mean, he started against Ipswich. He was brilliant. He scored. Great, brilliantly taken goal. In the international break, he was scoring goals for Wales. He's so good. And I don't think that we're seeing enough of him in crucial games like this. So I'd go with Adama on the right, Wilson on the left, and then either Iwobi, or probably would be Iwobi in the 10, and then up front it would be either Jimenez or Vinicius or Muniz whenever he's back. But like in terms of changing things up, I think Willian, not for me, Clive. He's just underperformed for too long now, and I can't blame him at the age of 35. You can't be like, well, he's underperformed. Well, he is 35. I'm not going to lie. His best years are behind him. He had one brilliant season last season. It's unrealistic to expect those sort of levels from him again. I think he's a nice player to maybe bring off the bench now. Maybe that is the way to go. Bring Willian off the bench with 20 minutes to go and run at tired legs. Yeah, I feel a bit unenthused with everything right now, Fulham wise. But that's the sort of spark move. Adama Traore coming back into the team, injection of pace. Harry Wilson on the left, or even swap them around. He can go on the left and Harry Wilson go on the right, or even Harry Wilson down the middle and Iwobi on the left and Adama on the right. I mean, the variation is Silva can play around with that. He also said that it's not helpful that all these players are going out on international break now when we sort of need time to sort of train at Motspur Park.
Yeah. Well, look, we've got options, as you've just pointed out. We've definitely got options of how we can change it. It's just whether Marco Silva will change it or not. I think, as you mentioned, we went through the squad. I think the obvious point of where things need to improve it is in that final third. So I think I'd like to see Adama Traore start, because I just think he provides us something that we don't have at the moment. Just someone who, on the wing, is willing to just bully past everyone. To be perfectly honest with you, maybe his final delivery isn't the greatest, but we're not getting into the positions at the moment to even worry about the final delivery. So let's get there, and then we can cross that bridge when we come to it, or cross that the ball.
Cross the ball when it comes to
it. But I think that we need to take this international break to really have a bit of a think about where Fulham are going to go up until Christmas, because this is a busy period now for Fulham. Mm-hmm. If you include that Carabao Cup game in there as well, it's a busy period for Fulham, and we want to be getting into Christmas or post Boxing Day where after we've played Bournemouth and we're on a healthy chunk of points, and we're not sitting it, or you and Joe aren't sitting there doing a Jack and Joe show at the start of January having this exact same conversation.
I expect an upturn in performances.
I think so.
Fulham. I think also you need to look at the last 4 games. The fixtures have been ridiculously hard. Villa away, United at home, Brighton away, and Spurs away. I mean that's as tough as it gets, really, for a period of games. Marco Silva would have signed a contract with the assurances that January he's going to get what he wants. And there are rumours circling. We should have mentioned it last week, but I suppose it's worth mentioning now. This midfielder from Fluminense, Andre, he's been linked with Fulham, and then he was linked with Arsenal, and he's linked with Liverpool, and it looks certain he wanted to go to Liverpool. Now he's been linked back to Fulham through Bruno Andrade, who's a very, very good journalist on the ground with Portuguese players, Brazilian players, he was very much in the go-to man when it came to João Palhinha's move to Fulham. He said last week that Liverpool had sort of called their interest in him, and he sort of tweeted, it's a free path for Fulham. And there was a report that came out this morning, as we record on the Tuesday, from Fulhamish Strong, which is a Twitter page that has 1.5 thousand followers. I mean, do I take it with a pinch of salt? Yes, but also there have been rumours circling around Andre to Fulham, so maybe it's something worth looking into. It basically says Fulham hires midfielder Andre for 35 million. Fulhamish will keep 15% of the player's next sale, so it's a sell on of 15%. Fine. Player will say goodbye to Fulhamish after the club's preparations in the Club World Cup, which takes place in December. I think Man City are obviously playing there. He looks incredible. I think people are saying he's the best midfielder outside of Europe, right now. And I've seen many a compilation of Andre, and I'm getting extremely giddy. Last time we signed a player from the Brazilian league was Rodrigo Muniz. But this player looks a little bit different in terms of the profile of play. He's obviously a midfielder, lots of tackling, lots of passing, lots of progressive plays. And Jack, I mean, if we were to sign him ahead of the signature of a club like Liverpool or Arsenal, it's a statement of intent, and it seems positive.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to sit here and claim I know too much about Andre.
Yeah, same.
I did an article on the Fulhamish website at the back end of last week, looking at players Fulham could sign in January, and Andre was one of them. I had a little bit of look into his stats and how he's performing in this, that, and the other. And he would be someone who would play in the kind of Lukic role in terms of if Palhinha's next to him, maybe a little bit further forward. Lots of positive stats in terms of progressive carries, bringing the ball forward, bringing others into play. Chance creation looks quite good as well. Good passing numbers. progressive passing numbers. He looks like he's always willing to look up and find a man with the ball. His defensive stats looked a little bit, concerning, but in terms of on the ball, he looks quite good. Obviously, for the Brazilian league, got to take that with a pinch of salt. But the fact that all these clubs are interested in him, and the fact that Fluminense are, demanding such a high fee for this player, he's got to be someone that, if Fulham did sign, would be someone that we could be absolutely excited about.
Yeah, I think that is what we need right now. We need something to get excited about. We need a striker in January. Guirassy, obviously, the main man being linked. I don't know. I don't know whether we'll. Seems if I had to pluck a name at the top of my head right now that's not Guirassy, you'd look at someone like Kelechi Iheanacho, who I know right now is bagging it in the Championship for Leicester, but he is a Premier League striker. He's got that pedigree. I think he'd be a great signing for Fulham. I look at someone like, it won't ever happen now because of the position they're in, but Dominic Solanke, someone who I would definitely, I would even say, look, you can have Vinicius and we can have Solanke. They'll obviously say no, but plus a fee. But Jack, we've been going on for half an hour, and I think it's justified because there is a lot to sort of iron out right now with Fulham. This is a sort of chance to it's like a therapy session, get your feelings across. Otherwise, if you leave them all bottled up, then what can happen. And our football club obviously means a lot to us, so it's important to sort of keep talking and keep the conversation going. But hopefully, it feels like the fan base need a lift, whether that be 3 points against Wolves, whether that be we actually are signing Andre. I don't know. Jack, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think that's it. I think Fulham just need a little bit of a pick-me-up, to be perfectly honest with you. If Fulham on Monday night, they beat Wolves, I don't think they'll beat them 2-0, but if they beat Wolves 2-0 and it's quite a comfortable performance, then, a lot of what we've said over the last 32 minutes, you kind of, those worries start to alleviate. I think that's it. I think I just want to see Fulham put in a really solid home performance where they're not really too concerned and they just get the job done. They get 3 points, we move on. And we hopefully can extend the gap on those 4 teams below us.
I'd love to see a graphic for what points you need to sort of stay up this season, because the threshold must be so much more, so much lower than it was in the last few years. You talk about the magical 40 points, and I was always looking last season at 40 points and going, well, as soon as we hit 40, that's that, we can relax. And we did it, eventually. But this season, we sit on 12 right now. I think like 32, 33 points, you'll be fine.
Yeah. I think if you hit 35, you'll be fine this season. I think the quality of those, I'm going to add us into it. I think the quality of those kind of teams down the bottom is pretty poor this season, to be perfectly honest with you. Burnley have had a season which, I don't think many people expected. I wasn't one of the people who was buying into the fact that Burnley were going to finish in mid-table and be really good. I would never really was into it. Sheffield United and Luton have kind of performed how expected. Bournemouth have surprised. A lot of people thought Bournemouth were going to do quite well after investing in the summer and bringing in Iraola. Again, there's still loads of time. We're only in November, but the quality of those teams isn't the greatest.
Sheffield United's next game is against Bournemouth. And they play, obviously, because we play Monday night, they'll be playing before us. If Bournemouth were to get a win and suddenly they're on the same points as us, I suppose that is probably the best case scenario. Or maybe actually a draw, because then, Sheffield United would, be on the same points as Luton. I don't know. It's too early to sort of think about that sort of thing. One thing I was going to say was that I think that Fulham, if we were to get 6 more wins this season, that would take us to 30 points, taking away any draws we pick up along the way. I think 6 more wins this season is probably enough to sort of see us survived. I just assume we'll get 5 draws along the way, maybe 7. We'll say 7 wins should be enough to sort of. But then again, we need to start winning games of football, and we were so close to getting a point against United, which is a frustrating thing as well, and that would have maybe alleviated some pressure. I mean, Forest are on 13, Everton on 14. And we were earlier, I was complimenting Everton, you were complimenting Everton, I was complimenting Forest. about how they've upturned in form, but actually, they're only 2 and 1 points above us.
I think the difference is with those clubs is over the last few weeks, you've seen really positive performances. Yeah. Everton went to Crystal Palace and scored 3 goals. They also, I'm pretty sure they got a point against Brighton as well at home. From memory, I'm pretty sure.
1-1.
Yeah, and then Forest. I mean, they went toe-to-toe with West Ham on the weekend. Beat Villa the weekend before as well. So I think it's the performances that are probably for me more concerning than the points tally at this moment in time.
Yeah.
But again, we're playing pretty strong teams at the moment. So hopefully with this run coming up will be okay.
I just wonder how many signings we need to make in January. I think minimum 2 midfielder and striker, but maybe someone in the defensive line as well. Can we ask Liverpool to recall Fabio Carvalho from Leipzig and just loan him out to us for the rest of the season? I mean,
I don't think I'd want. I don't think we need him. I don't think we'd want it. I think that we've got. I think
he'd add a little.
Alex Iwobi's playing so well, and always playing well in the 10, and Fabio Carvalho is not getting any minutes or anything like that. So I don't think necessarily that he would be the answer.
Wouldn't even get.
I think a striker, a midfielder. I wouldn't be too opposed to another one out wide, maybe on the left.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you've got Willian, who's played practically every game and has been pretty ineffective in most of them. I suppose, as you mentioned, you could put Wilson or a Dom Traore on that side as well, or a Iwobi. So maybe not, but I think 2 is the minimum.
Jack, thanks so much for being here today. Thanks for chatting through with myself about many issues that Fulham are having right now.
That's okay, mate. Thank you for having me. Thanks everyone for watching. I think you'll be back with Joe Sansom next week. So I'll be saying farewell until I'm called up for another substitution when Joe goes perhaps on yet another holiday.
Yeah, perhaps Joe goes on another holiday, or the deadline day stream in January when we sort of bring people on. That would be good fun, but I'm sure it'll be before then as well, because you never know what happens in life. Guys, keep the conversation going in the comments. Be respectful. Any Villa fans in the comments, well, congratulations on your win. I thought, I quite enjoyed everyone saying in the comments how Fulham have no chance of beating Villa, and thus proved to be the case as well. Thanks so much for watching. Try and keep the spirits high during this international break. We'll see you next week to preview Wolves for our sins, and come on, Fulham.